pearl, and I'm going to shout because the sound system at the back is too complicated to open up, and the acoustic here is quite good. It's an enormous pleasure to welcome you all to the launch for the Faintest of Tickles, and we're very impressed by the distances people have travelled to get here. I think Dave has come from Brussels. Judith and Keith have come from all over the West Country and the Midlands. They've been travelling around and they've come here. David, the pianist, who is also a contributor, has come from deepest Lincolnshire.
Rutland.
Rutland!
I did come from Lincolnshire.
I'm not sure they play cricket in Rutland, do they? Or maybe they do.
Leicestershire. Occasionally played Lincolnshire.
Right, okay. Well, if anybody did walk from Golders Green Station, first aid and foot plasters are we've got a number of contributors to the book here. Judith, who's come with Keith, is one of them. David Wood. I'm going to miss out others who are here. Peter Wise. Peter, yes. Sarah. And Sarah. Alex. I've done the odd bit. Robert. I'm so sorry, Robert. And Hugh, who has left because his back is playing up, who's not only made a contribution, but been very much involved with the project, and we're very grateful to him for those efforts. From Surrey, we have Chris, Brad, and Hyla. Thank you very much indeed for coming. They're representing the club, and Chris Coleman is the director of the charitable arm, and he'll have a couple of words to say later on. We've got some old friends here. I don't think any ex-peasants are here. I don't think they've made it. It was always difficult rounding them up for a cricket match. But for everybody who's made the journey, many thanks. And I just want to say very briefly that we've had a lot of messages from absent friends. Some of them are contributors to the book, others are people who were desperate to come, but they've all been waylaid by the circumstances of life and illness and hospital admission and all sorts of things. But we've had a lot of very pleasant messages today. One of them from Dan Norcross. Dan has written the foreword, for which we're very grateful, and always planned to come tonight, but it required him to shift a recording session with 4 others, and unfortunately it hasn't been possible. But he sent very warm regards and best wishes to the gathering. Now, a little later on, we'll be performing a couple of cricket songs, accompanied by David Whittle on the piano. But before that, in true Bedser twins style, may I ask my brother Alex to say a few words about the book.
Thanks, David. Yeah, it's great to be here. This anthology is, of course, a joint venture and couldn't have come to fruition without the contributions generously made by everyone in the book. So, as David says, a massive thank you to everyone of the 22 contributors. Without you, we wouldn't have a book. When David first suggested the idea of persuading a bunch of writers, journalists, or anyone, in fact, nuts enough to about cricket to wax lyrical about their favourite sport, I had an inkling that we might be able to garner a few contributions. I was slightly better placed than David, as I was able to contact 100 authors who had previously contributed to my compendium of author interviews, 100 Ways to Write a Book. I'm plugging that there for you. Which was published during COVID. The only downside here, of course, was that over half of those authors I interviewed were from America, and the nation not known for its understanding, let alone love of our summer game. There were, however, a few who took up the bait immediately. Laura E. Goodin, a novelist, playwright and librettist from Melbourne, Australia, was the first, and and kindly contributed a fabulous science fiction tale set in the future world where global warming and perennial rain has turned the ashes into the splashes. This was swiftly followed up by a cheeky poem by the poet and young adult novelist Marjorie Mallon, and an evocative and reflective piece by the novelist Pete Langman about his experience playing for the historic Authors 11 at Chiswick Park. This got us off to a particularly good start, since David had already knocked up 7 pieces, so we were into double figures. Then we turned our attention to our family and friends. This brought us an amusing reminiscence by David's work colleague, Paul Stewart, who couldn't make it today, and a deftly penned poem by another of his acquaintances, John Corcutt. Thanks to my membership of the Crime Writers Association, I was able to attract some very desirable extras in the form of the prolific crime writer Judith Cutler, who's with us today, whose 50th novel, in fact, features cricket. Her piece is a lovely period mystery that revolves around W.G. Grace. Other terrific contributions through the revered body include David Whittle, who's here on piano today, Sean O'Leary, Bud Craig and Anne Parker. And then, of course, my good friend, the playwright Hugh Salmon, who unfortunately had to leave earlier because of his back, not only contributed a piece from his book Thoughts That Matter, but also wrote in some very distinguished plays in the form of commentator, journalist and author Isabel Duncan, who unfortunately has done her knee in today, so can't be with us, the Times cricket correspondent Geoffrey Dean, who I don't know if he's here or not, he's meant to be here, but he may not be. He may have got lost, I don't know. And former adman and headmaster Robert Blyton, who's sitting over here. At this point, Dave and I felt rather confident, and we'd got our eye in at this point, and we thought we could afford to be a little bit adventurous. So I contacted Ben McIntyre's agent to see if Ben would like to contribute his amusing piece for the Times about Adolf Hitler playing cricket. And surprisingly, he actually agreed there and then, and so so that one's in there. And then we continued to badger family and friends who, rather than suffer the constant barrage from the Pearl brothers, relented. So further pieces were dispatched by my daughter Sarah Traynor, my cousin Jessica Davis, our good friend, the journalist and author Jonathan Margolis, who again couldn't make it today, as well as my friends from the advertising community, Peter Wise and Dave Woods. Before we knew it, we had 29 pieces by 22 authors. And finally, thanks to Izzy Duncan, I was able to contact Dan Norcross, who very kindly and graciously penned a lovely foreword to the book, for which we are very grateful. Now, the wonderful thing about this handsome volume is that it really is an eclectic collection of writing. Every piece has its own tone of voice and its own inimitable take on the summer game, and they're all deeply personal. We have reminiscences, anecdotal accounts, history pieces, poetry, and short stories. We have here writers at the top of their game, like Ben McIntyre, whose bestsellers like Operation Mincemeat and SAS Rogue Heroes have been turned into lavish cinema TV productions, and rubbing shoulders with the likes of Mr. McIntyre. We have writers just starting out, like Jessica Davis, whose heartbreaking and profoundly moving poem, in memory of her father, who died far too young, is her first published piece. As far as David and I were concerned, we wanted to give everyone with a distinctive voice a chance to be heard. So on this basis, I'd just like to read a very short poem that encapsulates this ethos, and the poem is, of course, by Jessica Davis, and it's entitled Ashes. Excuse me. On some days, she waited by painted white lines. The ball, an explosive, is rubbed and then tossed. His face disappears in a shadow of dust. Fielders at battle with grass stains and wines, animated shadows with splay and combust. On Sundays, she waited by painted white lines. Each cap will search for curls of brown rust as his face disappears in a shadow of dust and the enemy's spirit gently declines. On Sundays, she waited by painted white lines for a father whose loyalty always aligns with an army of shin pads that form a life's trust. His face disappears, and a shadow of dust as a tar-fueled infection that attacks and entwines in the left of his mind, leaving brain cells concussed. On Sunday, she stood by the painted white lines, watching ashes scattered in fleeting designs, transformed from ashes to dust. Each Sunday, she stands by warm paint and just watches young cricket players waiting for signs of a returning figure with curls of brown rust, but his face disappears in the darkness of dust. And now to conclude, I'd just like to say that we are not selling the books here tonight. The books are available as of now online at Amazon, and between now and midnight tomorrow, you can order paperbacks, hardbacks, and e-books at a special discount. And finally, most importantly, I should add here that all author royalties will be donated to Surrey County Cricket Club's charity foundation that helps to promote cricket across the country. But for now, I think we'll have a little break. But don't go away, because we have a little bit of entertainment lined up for you. I use the word entertainment loosely. And in between this musical interlude, Chris Coleman is going to give say a few words about the work of Surrey and the Surrey Foundation. So I think top up your glasses and bear with us. Thank you.